No, they don't. They don't.
They live their life and not Gobbler. Absolutely.
All right. I hope y'all can hear me in the back. My voice is about gone trying to talk over them turkey calls in there. So my name's Mark Prudhomme. Just a brief introduction of kind of who I am. I'm I guess a turkey hunter first and foremost, and then I kind of went into the world of competition calling and did that for many years and won a few contests, whatnot. But the last few years, I kind of retired from competition, and the last few years I've just enjoyed playing with different kinds of calls, mostly trumpets. Tube calls and trumpets are kind of my passion. I grew up in Georgetown, South Carolina, which is kind of the heart historically for a lot of stuff. Henry Davis wrote the book, The American Wild Turkey. Henry Davis was from about an hour from my house, and it was published by Thomas Samworth, who was right across the river from me at that time on another plantation, and published a lot of books about stuff, but probably one of the most notable is The American Wild Turkey by Henry Davis. Archibald Rutledge is about 30 minutes south of me from Hampton Plantation. He wrote a lot of stories about turkey hunting and hunting in general. And I killed my first turkey in the Francis Marion National Forest, probably just a couple miles from where Archibald Rutledge wrote about, and Henry Davis actually hunted and noted that he felt like the Francis Marion Forest in the Waterhorn district, in fact, where I killed my first turkey, was one of the purest strains of wild turkeys. I don't know about all that biologically, but it does seem that way. I've spent a lot of time hunting. A lot of people have asked me to go a lot of places. I've had opportunities to hunt all over the United States, and I do go occasionally, but I tell you, I tell people all the time, I can get beat up by a turkey, a mile from the house. So turkeys tend to be tough. Everybody thinks they got the hardest turkeys to hunt, but I know for a fact that turkeys can be very difficult anywhere that there's pressure. That's something too that I hear a lot of people saying, well, I hunt public land and public land's hard and all like that. And I'm gonna tell you that's true. That's very true. But I've been asked many times where's the hardest place I've hunted. And I would say the hardest place that I've hunted is on my ground behind myself. And the reason I say that is I've had turkeys that whip me, and some of them have heard everything I got. So if you get to a point to where you're maybe somebody hunted a turkey before you on public land and he wasn't a great caller, or maybe he run a box call and you running something else. But if you pull everything out of your bag of tricks on your own ground and you're not successful, then that's a pretty tough bird most of the time. Those are the kind of turkeys that usually get a name. Name turkey. Anybody says, hey, come over here and help me kill old Tom or old Joe, there's a pretty good chance you're gonna get licked. He's got a name, he's tough. I was asked just today actually, and I thought about it. People ask me all the time, they say, well, what is your go-to call? And I guided for many, many years, and when you're guiding and you get paid to hunt, you have to produce. You want to kill a turkey. You want to be successful for your hunter. So I would, I guess I did pretty well with diaphragms all through competition and everything, but I started kind of getting into trumpets many years ago, and I found that I liked the challenge of it. But not only that, I felt like the realism on trumpets was there. And I really strive for realism. I think realism is the most important thing that you can do. Sometimes, as far as calling goes. Now, woodsmanship will always play a role in knowing your land, but realism is very important. So when asked, what's your go-to call, I'm gonna say trumpet and then tube call. So those are my two favorites. And the reason being, I'm not saying that they're better than a diaphragm or better than a box or better than a pot call, but what I tell people is I really enjoy the challenge of it. I hunt with an old double barrel shotgun. And I got a Benelli with a red dot scope. I've got 3.5 inch shells. I've got TSS. I've got strutting decoys. I've got everything, and have hunted with all of that. I've hunted out of pop-up blinds. I've belly crawled. I've used full strut gobbling decoys. I've done all that. But over the last few years, I've really enjoyed the challenge of getting close to turkeys, calling turkeys in close, and hunting with an old 100-year-old shotgun, calling them with a trumpet call or a tube call that I made. That, to me, that's my go-to call. Not necessarily because it's better, because that's what I enjoy. Some people enjoy bow hunting, and you're at a disadvantage. When you're bow hunting, you got to be 30 yards, and you'd rather be closer. Same thing with an old double barrel. I'm not going to shoot a bird more than 30 yards. I'm shooting sometimes 2.5 inch shells. So the challenge of that combined with the trumpet, it's just what I want to do. I'm not saying that a box call or pop call or any other call is not as good. But I will tell you that, in my opinion, nothing kills turkeys like realism. And to me, a trumpet has got a lot of realism, and a tube call has realism. And when I say realism, I'm talking about actually sounding like a turkey. A lot of people know how to call. A lot of people can make most of the calls that a wild turkey can make. But I think the secret to it is, I know a couple words in Spanish, but I can't speak the language. So I think not just knowing the calls, but how do you use that in a sentence? Take those calls, you think about that. Take those calls and put it together in a sentence the way a turkey would do it, and the inflection and the things that a turkey would do. That's what kills turkeys. That's what fools those old turkeys that sometimes have been messed with. You take a guy running a box call and he's just sawing on it and he cuts. And a lot of people tend to do the same thing over and over and over. They'll just, I mean, I hear that all the time. And people get in this routine and they start doing this thing and they don't realize they're doing it. I hear this all the time with duck calling. I'm a big duck caller too, blown in the world duck calling championship and goose calling and all that stuff. And I hear these guys and they have these routines, and they get so into the routine and focused. And I hear guys blowing a duck call and they start not sounding so much like a duck. And it happens in the turkey world too. So you take a series of calls and you put them together, and then you do that same series, and a lot of guys do a lot of cackling and stuff like that. But what are you actually saying to that turkey? How are you putting those sounds in context? How are you using those calls? So I always start off, and this is something, a lot of old Harold Knight used to say, you got to take turkey's temperature. Well, I believe that 100%, but what I always start off with is soft stuff. If you start off soft, you don't know if there's a turkey. I mean, maybe you know where the turkey is, but you don't know if there's a turkey, especially in hilly country or thick places. There could be a turkey 50 yards from you don't know about. So if I come running up to you and all of a sudden I get in your face and I start yelling, that's you're like, whoa, something's wrong here. That's just not how it works. So a turkey's the same way. You don't just bust out with start cutting and carrying on and cackling. So if you start soft, you can always get louder. but you can't always bring it back down. You kind of already set a precedent for what's going, what's going on. If I come running by you, most of the time you know something's after me, and you're going to take off running too before you even know what I'm running from. So turkeys are kind of the same way. When you throw an alert out there, it's kind of hard to settle them back down. So I'll always start off kind of soft, and then I'll build. And I'm gonna tell you something right now. An old man told me a long time ago. He said, "Never call something that's coming anyway." I've killed turkeys, and I've never even called. In fact, I fooled with a turkey one time that whipped me every morning. And back in those days, I was a little, well, I guess like my wife said, I'm still hard-headed, but I feel like, I'm gonna kill this turkey, and I'd go every morning, he'd go the other way. And I did the same thing every day. And I just took a wing with me, and I went in there and I sat down, and I didn't make a single sound, and I just took that wing. And that turkey flew down and landed right in front of my gun barrel. Sometimes things like that are what you gotta do. Calling isn't always the answer. But when you do call, I feel like it's important to start soft, know what you're saying. You gotta learn the turkey's language. If you watch a turkey has body language, and they do things, with clucking and purring, and the turkey's making sounds all the time. But some of them are so subtle. I know everybody in here has probably been deer hunting or even turkey hunting and had birds come right by you. And you hear these little soft, subtle sounds, and that is a soothing to another turkey. That tells you everything's okay, everything's fine. Sometimes when you start, especially with predators and other things, when you start getting loud, if a turkey's getting loud, they don't want to get loud unless they're trying to get together. I've heard turkeys trying to assemble that's been busted up, that a turkey is not gonna speak a whole lot if they don't have to. So turkeys that are together tend to do soft stuff, and turkeys that get spread out tend to be a little louder, but they're not just gonna go on and on and on unless they're really trying to get back together. You hear a lot of that in the fall, but you hear it in the spring too with younger birds that are trying to group back up if you bust them or something like that. So starting soft and sounding like what a turkey does is the most important. Realism, in my opinion, is the key. So there's lots of different sounds. A lot of people, I don't kiki in the spring unless the situation calls for it, but it's effective. And I actually will do gobbler yelps many times. I know everybody here, in the springtime, a lot of times gobblers are bunched up, and especially early season. So I've killed turkeys gobbler yelping, I've killed turkeys gobbling. You gotta be careful with that depending on where you hunt, but everything says something. A lot of times gobblers will gobble at other gobblers, trying to get back together. I hear that all the time. Last year I spent a lot of time with a flock of gobblers. I found a place they were roosting just about every morning, and I probably learned more about those gobblers and gobbler talk last fall than I have in a while at one time. Those gobblers got together. They would fly down. I'd hear not a lot of talking on the limb, but I would hear just a lot of clucks. And a cluck is very underrated. A lot of people, don't think that a cluck won't kill a turkey. Sometimes you feel like yelping to a turkey is the only way. What are you really trying to say? A lot of times you're just trying to say, hey, I'm a turkey and I'm here. And a turkey that's looking for another turkey, a cluck is all you need. And some of those old big gobblers will come to a cluck, and you don't have to, let's just say you don't feel like your yelping's all that good or whatever. Start off with a cluck. Start off soft. Start off with that kind of thing. Learn gobbler yelps, learn, I mean, you don't have to gobble, of course, but, you know, the more different types of calls you can learn, the better off you'll be. So I like that. I like for people to ask questions because I don't want to ramble on. I mean, some of you people probably been hunting longer than I have, and I don't want to get too basic or whatever. If anybody's got any questions, yes, sir.
You're talking about the gobblers getting together. I noticed, you know, in my years of hunting that it can vary depending on the season and how far along they are. But usually at some point during the season, the gobblers will answer you, but they won't come. You know, they'll answer
Right.
the end call. What kind of call do you like to use to try to assemble? You know, how they try to assemble together. Have you found something that's effective to call a gobbler over?
There's a couple ways you can do that. You can call to a gobbler, and maybe he's like wanting to get back together, or maybe you're challenging him. Maybe you're in his area. When you're deer hunting, you rattle horns together, or buck grunt. You're challenging a deer that's his territory. Gobbler same way. Let's think about this. Everybody here knows how effective a strut and decoy is. Okay, so I know people right now who can't call a lick. Got a friend who kills his limit every year and he can't call a lick. He's got a strut and decoy. He'll put that strut and decoy out. If another gobbler sees that, he comes running to it. And he comes up there and he shoots it. Well, I mean, I don't put anybody down for hunting like they want to hunt. I just enjoy the calling aspect of it. But think about that for a minute. The only reason he knew that decoy was there is because he saw it. Well, let's just say you don't have a decoy, or you're hunting thick stuff. You're doing the same thing if you're a gobbler yelping. You're telling him, hey, there's a gobbler here. So he may come running to that the same as that decoy. The only difference is he sees a gobbler. What's the difference in that? And he hears a gobbler. So he knows that gobbler's not supposed to be there, or, you know, that's one that he's already run off, or maybe it's a security thing. You know, a lot of times, and especially these 2-year-olds, they like to hang out in little groups, and so you got two chances there. You got the you know, get out of my territory, or hey, I'm coming over there and let's get back together kind of thing. So don't overlook that aspect of it. That's a big deal. So anybody else got any questions? Yes, sir.
What about silent pressure birds? My club probably gets more pressure than a lot of public land. Move and cluck and move. I mean, what?
See, that's a good question. I hunt a place like that too, and I have a theory on that. I think, excuse me, I think a lot of I hunt some areas that are open ag land, and then I hunt some areas that are thick, like timber company land that's been clear cut, and you got these narrow corridors and things. I believe that some of that is predator induced. I think turkeys don't gobble a whole lot because they attract predators. It doesn't take, you know, turkeys are not geniuses, but they're pretty sharp and wily, and they have a desire to live. So I think it doesn't take many times when they start gobbling, and here comes a coyote or a bobcat or whatever. You know, they start gobbling, and they're attracting predators. And the place I hunt has a lot of bobcats and things like that, and hardly any hunting pressure. But then I've hunted places that got a lot of pressure in the ag land where it's more open, where they can see, and they tend to gobble more. I don't know if there's a correlation, but that's just my theory on it. So I think in those situations, knowing your land and knowing your turkeys is vital. I think if you can figure out where those birds like to roost and where they like to feed and how they get from one place to another, being in the right spot is more important than anything. Location and setting up in the right spot, being where a turkey wants to go anyway, is a big deal. And if you need to call, you know, start soft, do some clucks, just some reassurance that, you know, hey, everything's here, and don't do what everybody else is doing. And that's the key. If everybody else is running a box call and they're yelping like crazy, don't do that. Switch to a trumpet, switch to a different type of call and run it. You know, most people tend to call loud, aggressive, and hey, I'm one of them. I love to call loud. This tooth call right here, I can call them from the other county. But you sometimes you just gotta know when to back down. And it sounds like in that situation, that's probably, just like hunting, just public land, and I agree with you, hunting club land, man, I've hunted hunting clubs that they get hounded every day by the same guys. Some people take vacation, they hunt all week long, the first day, our first week of the season, and they just hammer them. So, another thing you don't overlook too, is, once a few turkeys are killed, it takes a little time to get that pecking order sorted back out. So you go in and you got one bird gobbling, you kill him, you just cut gobbling down 50%. If you had two birds gobbling, now you got one, that's 50% less gobbling. And then too, the dominant bird may be the one that's been gobbling, and the other one he ain't figured out yet, all right, I need to start gobbling. So there's some of that too, if you get a lot of successful hunters on your land. So there's a lot of things to consider, but I would do soft stuff and reassuring stuff to try to, and be where they wanna go.
How often would you move? That's the thing, it's hard to stay optimistic, but a couple hours, would you move every?
That depends on how big your place is. If I was hunting 10,000 acres, I would probably move more, and I'd try to be, try to make sure I'm in the right place. If I've got 50 acres, I ain't going nowhere. I'm gonna sit where I think he's going, I'm gonna pack a lunch. That's the way you kill old turkeys that gone silent on you. And then you start looking at pressured birds and things like that, and they're used to seeing people moving around, and on a silent bird, you don't wanna get up and move and you bust him. He sees you, or you walk into him, or you know what I'm saying? So I wouldn't necessarily move a whole lot if he's not gobbling. You don't know where he's at, so you may end up spooking him, walking up on him, or something like that. But I mean, sometimes I'm impatient too, and I can't sit all day. But that patience kills turkeys. If you got nowhere else to go, I'd sit tight.
Thank you.
Anybody else got a question? Yes, sir.
If you get one to gobble on the limb in the morning, what do you think is the closest you should get to it?
I like to get close, but then there again, that's kind of a challenge I have. I like to get up and get tight. And I tell you why, a lot of times, the farther you are away, the more things can go wrong. There's more chance of another hunter coming in there, there's more chance of a hen coming between you, there's more chance of him hanging up. There's a lot can go wrong. Distance is not your friend on that, but getting too close and busting one is not good either. And that brings up another point, and everybody's got a theory on this. Harold Knight's a great friend of mine, and we disagree on this. He don't call to a turkey on the limb. I call to a turkey on the limb every time, and I tell you why. I've watched turkeys, and most of the time in the spring, if you got a turkey there and he's gobbling, there's hens there, because he was with hens the day before, and he may not be roosted on top of them, but he's probably not far from them. They'll tend to, in the afternoons, the gobblers will kind of drift off and kind of do their own thing, and they may roost over here and the hens may roost over here. That's important to know too. I want to be between them, or at least I want to go where those hens are going, because they're going to some point get together at some point. So you got to take their place. So I want to be the first hen on the ground. I want to throw my hat in the ring first. So another thing, I want that turkey, if that turkey's on the limb gobbling and he's facing that way, I want to turn him around and make him turn around and face my way. If I can make him face my direction, I feel like I got a better chance of him flying down in my direction. And I promise you, I've had a bunch of them fly the other way. And
What works on that? Do you hit them with a call right after they gobble?
well, what would a hen do early in the morning?
I mean, she'll just yell.
The very first thing a hen you're gonna hear is tree calling.
Yeah, how do you get him to turn around though? I mean.
Be the first hen he hears.
Okay.
That's just my opinion, there's people who disagree with that. But if I can start, I've heard hens yelping in the dark, and, I've heard turkeys gobbling in the dark. So, as long as you sound like a hen tree yelping, and you don't get over, and you just hit it a few times, and certainly if he responds, if he'll gobble at that, then you're like, okay, he knows I'm here. Half the game is he knows you're there. Sometimes you don't have to do anything else. But if you got a hen over there yelping, I'm gonna match her. If she starts yelping, I'm gonna start yelping. At the worst, well, there's two ways that can go. She gets mad and leads him off, or either she gets mad and comes to you, which is gonna lead him to you too. So, and there ain't no science to it. I've been whipped both ways. I've had them get mad and take him the other way, and it's just a 50-50. But I want to know that I did everything I could to let that turkey know that I'm here, and that's my thing.
I'm gonna tell you, the first turkey I ever killed, a guy took me under his wing, and all I knew how to do was make a turkey call. And he said, "You know where the turkey is?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Just what you said." He said, "Make a little light tree call. If he answers you, shut up and don't make another sound."
Sure.
And I killed that turkey.
Yeah. Why? Your whole object is to let him know you're there.
Yeah.
If he knows that you're there and he's looking for a hen, then, and if you're the only hen around, most of the time he's gonna come to you.
Yeah.
I've had hunters with me and they messed that up. I've messed it up myself. I've had them fly down behind me and, come up and behind me and see me, all kind of things. But another thing that people overlook all the time, I've made that same mistake myself. Just because you hear a turkey gobbling there and a hen yelping there, that don't mean that's the only turkeys there are. You get to, all right, she's over there, he's right there, I can move a little bit, and then one's right here. I've had turkeys roost in the tree I'm leaning against, and that never ends up good. I mean, never. So, all those things come into play, and the only way to try to do that is to make those mistakes over and over, and then you learn from that, because you're gonna do it. I still do it, no matter what. If you're not making mistakes, you're not learning. So I've learned way more from my mistakes than I ever have from successes. I've yelped one time to a turkey and killed him. Didn't learn anything. You know what I'm saying? I've learned more from turkeys whipping me and that kind of thing than I ever will anything else. So you got to take your licks. Anybody got any?
You maybe
I'm sorry.
go from turkeys and go to maybe some tips for playing the trumpet, just some pointers.
Sure. Let me see if you got a hunting related question.
Real quick, with the trumpet, why do you feel that fires hens up so much? I've used it in times where birds went silent on me.
Yeah.
And just trying to position in front of them, I can get the hens to answer me quicker than I can anything else, and I use it just for positioning.
And
Is it something about that just that sound that fires a hen up so much, it seems like?
I think, I'm not gonna tell you that I know all the mysteries of the trumpet. There's something about a trumpet that definitely turkeys respond to. I don't know the answer to it, but I do know that a lot of it is realism. It sounds like a turkey in the woods. If you back off, it may not sound like a turkey from me to you, but it sounds like a turkey at a distance. And I think that turkeys will always respond to realism because they're convinced. I've killed a lot of turkeys with a trumpet that they were 100% convinced it was a turkey. And I've seen turkeys hang up, running a diaphragm call, a box call, pop call. I've seen them come in and hang up, and they will with a trumpet. But I've seen less birds hang up, stop short with a trumpet. And the only thing I can contribute that to, there's two things, is realism, and maybe they're fooled about where I'm at. I think they can pinpoint, maybe something about a trumpet that is a little harder to pinpoint. They know that hen's there, but a trumpet, the sound from a trumpet, and I've done a lot of testing on this, the sound from a trumpet played even soft will travel farther than a diaphragm or something like that played at the same volume. And then I know there's scientists that will maybe disagree with that. Sound is sound, but I tell you this. When you want to get somebody's attention and they're at a distance, the first thing you're gonna do is cup your hands, okay? So what you're doing is you're directing that sound. You're taking more sound waves and you're concentrating them and you're sending them in a direction. Well, that's what a trumpet does. You can use that to your advantage in a couple ways. Number one, you can play it soft, and they think that maybe they're confused about exactly, now turkeys, they know how to pinpoint stuff. I'm not saying they don't. But I think that they may feel like that the turkey is farther or closer than what it actually is. And then also, I can change the direction with a trumpet. Everybody knows, I mean, there's people in here, I know Rob's back there and he's done this a million times. I've had turkeys coming to my right side, coming this way. And I have sat there and I'm like, oh man, I can't get turned, I can't get my gun around. I've shot turkeys left-handed because I had to. But with a diaphragm call, you can take your hand and do this right here, and I've seen that turkey do just like that. I'm directing that sound. I've made turkeys come from my off side to this side many times. Trumpet is no different. In fact, I think it's a little better. I can take that and I can direct that sound in that direction, and I can guide. It doesn't always work. A lot of times turkeys used to come in a certain route and they're gonna do that regardless. But I feel like I can make that turkey turn a little bit. Also, I've had turkeys that might hang up and I can turn around and without moving. You know, one of the old tricks is turkey hangs up out of sight and I get up, and especially if I got two guys, I get up and I go back about 100 yards and call from that point. He thinks that hen's leaving. So he's like, well, she's leaving, I'm gonna follow in behind her. You know, if you can leave somebody there and you go do that, it's pretty deadly. Well, I can turn that trumpet around and project that sound that way, and it gives the illusion that I'm leaving or I'm farther. So, and you hadn't gone anywhere. And sometimes that'll do it. I've done that a few times. So, I think that's kind of the, you know, I guess there's a mystique about a trumpet, and they do respond to it. Realism and then something that I can't explain. Anybody else got a question? Yes, sir.
Do you feel that you kill more birds later on in the morning than you do right off the roost?
I do. I do.
Do you know why that might be?
Well, first and foremost, I think competition. I think because there's other hens that he knows. I mean, he went to bed, you know, knowing there's hens right there, and a lot of times they get together. And how many times, I can't tell you how I've been calling a turkey to me and a hen come out of nowhere and he comes over there and breeds her over there. You know, she's going to him, and that's the way it's supposed to be. So there's a lot of stuff can go on right off the roost. And there's times when it's deadly, times when nothing can go wrong. You're there, he's here. I've hunted areas that there was dikes and ponds on both sides. He didn't have no choice to come. I hunted a sporting clay course one time. Never forget that. I had a guy with me, and I watched the birds go to roost. And there's a highway here and a highway here and a pond right there. They had nowhere to go. They walked this golf cart path right through there, and they went to roost, and every day they walked that golf cart path right back. Well, I'm gonna set up on that golf cart path. You know, in fact, we rode the golf cart back there. So I mean, there's times when you can put yourself in a position to be successful if you don't screw it up, which I've done that too. But you know, but sometimes off the roost isn't always easy. And once all that's all out the way, and those gobblers or those hens, and especially, you know, mid-season or something, and those hens are going off the nest, or even late season, they're checking out. And those gobblers are kind of left alone, and they're trolling, looking for hens. And That's pretty deadly time. You to sound like a turkey right there. Anybody else? Mm-hmm.
I know you probably can gobble real well on that too, call. How often would you use a gobble? Is it like last resort, or you use a Jake gobble instead of?
I would do goblet turkeys and probably a last resort. Because, you know, I'm gonna go up the scale. I'm gonna soft call, I'm gonna soft yelp, and I'm gonna get excited, I'm gonna cut. If that don't work, I'm gonna kind of step it up, I'm gonna do some different things, and then I'm gonna probably Jake yelp. And if that doesn't work, then I'll try to gobble. I mean, if nothing else is working, try to gobble. Try to make him think there's a gobbler there and he's coming over there to fight. I've had them leave hens and come to a gobble. So, you know, I'm not saying it works all the time, but it has before. So that's kind of I would say last resort, yeah. Yes. Anybody, yes, sir?
If you're hunting, like hills or semi-mountains, you think it's better to be on the same level, above? What have you found? works
Well,
best?
most of my hunting is on flat ground. I can see a long way and they can see a long way, but I've hunted hills. I've hunted in Kentucky with Harold and David, and I noticed those birds, and some of y'all may be local and some of y'all may hunt mountains and hills, but I've noticed that a lot of those birds, they don't always go to the top and run those ridges. Sometimes they do. I've noticed they kind of side hill a lot, and they're looking, and they're bad about sticking their head up just enough to see. So you can't hardly see anything, and then they'll stick their head up. And they're periscoping you. Exactly, that's what I call it. So I've noticed a lot of that. So I've had birds come downhill to me. I've had birds come uphill, but I've noticed a lot that they kind of travel down those, and man, it's hard to see a turkey that's coming through there and he just every now and then sticking his head up and, you know, like that periscoping. It's tough. So that's just what I've learned in hills. I'm not gonna say I'm an expert in the mountains or the hills, but that's what I've experienced. Yes, sir.
You have a CD or DVD of your callings that you sell?
I don't.
What, are you holding back or?
Well,
Because when Batty came out with that Spitting Feathers, it's a joy for 2 months before the season to listen to that. I sure would like to have your CD or DVD. I bet everybody in here would purchase one.
well, I appreciate that. I don't have anything. I've got some YouTube stuff out there that I've done, some different things. You can go on YouTube and hear some of that, and I've got some hunts on there with the National Wild Turkey Federation and some things on YouTube. And I'm probably gonna do some more of that.
Is that on your website or?
I have I'm not let me tell you too, I'm old school. I'm not computer savvy or anything else, but my son's trying to get me out of the cave and trying to put me out there a little bit more. But I have a YouTube channel, but I don't think I got a couple things on there. I'm gonna try to improve on that. But you can go on there and type my name and some stuff will pop up. You'll get some sound files and some different things.
I know you don't have a lot of time, but look at the money you could generate with this crowd if I could purchase.
I don't know. This crowd here, I'm not sure.
Oh, yeah.
I think you found a manager over there.
Yeah, I'm looking for an agent. You available? So I'll run through some calls real quick. If nobody's got any more questions, I'll run through some stuff to kind of show you what I do. And I'll tell you something. I've been in there calling. My lips are about numb. I'll do the best I can. But I'll kind of show you how I would start off in the morning. And if it's running right, I'll maybe go through a morning sequence. So that was just kind of soft tree
Somebody's
talk.
been practiced.
Soft tree talk, coming off the limb, getting a little more excited. I threw a Jake yelp or two in there, and then some clear stuff and a little bit raspier stuff. That's just kind of how I would start off if the turkey's responding. Now, if the turkey's not responding, midday, like we were talking about midday, I'm going to my tube call. And I think a tube call has a lot of realism, and it's very versatile. Now, I'm not a soft caller on tube call. I believe when tube call comes out, things start getting serious and I start getting aggressive. So I'm gonna go through some stuff to what I would do with a tube, and then I'll throw for realism. And I want you to hear something in this. I'm gonna do some yelping. Turkeys have inflection. Turkeys don't just yelp. They actually put feeling into it. So that, I call it inflection. So you're gonna hear some yelping, and it's just gonna kind of get excited, and you're gonna hear a little bit of plead in it, if you know what I'm saying, a little bit of, and then I'm gonna throw in a couple other things that they're gonna try to get. And this maybe, I'm gonna say maybe this is a hen that's trying to get back with a group, or trying to call the turkeys to her. You hear that up and down, that I'm calling, and a lot of times when a turkey's doing that, she's listening at the same time. Believe it or not, they can call and listen. A turkey, if you're watching a turkey doing that, you'll see her calling, and she'll pause and listen and look at the same time. Mostly look, and then she'll listen. And if you're watching a turkey, she'll just turn her head and she starts yelping. She's not getting a response, so she gets back into it. She starts getting a little more frantic. And then she might throw that key in there to say, okay, where are you at? Where's everybody at? That kind of thing. That's a pleading sound. That little sequence right there will fire a hen up. That'll get a hen to answer you. If those hens are with a gobbler, it can give his location. And Harold Knight told me a long time ago too, you gotta listen for that Jake count. Because a lot of times that Jake will do that in the presence of a gobbler, and you'll know there's a gobbler there because he starts calking. So if I'm yelping, I'll throw a Jake in there to try to get a Jake to answer me, so I'll know where they're at. So I'll you hear that, and it may make that gobbler think there's a gobbler with you. So he may come check that out. So that's another little thing to do. So tube call, very versatile. Trumpet, I think, has a lot of realism. So that's why I picked those two, and they complement each other. Soft, loud, realism, aggressiveness. So that's just kind of my go-to pair. That's my double barrel right there. So. Anybody got any other questions?
Mark, can you kind of take them through, especially the video too, on the kind of the basics? I mean, not to run completely through the trumpet, and I mean the basics of how you set your lips.
Yep.
Any kind of, the sound chamber tips, just a quick tips for them, for those that don't know.
Yeah. So everybody's mouth is different. Everybody runs a call different. And the way that I'm running a call doesn't necessarily mean you have to run a call that way. The majority of people run a call clear, and there's nothing wrong with that. It kills turkey. Just kind of, and that's a little bit different method. I'm pulling air, and I'm using my lips more, kind of a. Nothing wrong with that. That'll kill them right there. But there's different ways you can run that. And if I change the way I'm drawing air, and this is very difficult, but I'm pulling air with my throat at this point, and I'm mostly making that air come through my throat, and that's hard to describe. But then you can kind of change it a little bit. So you hear the clear style, the raspy style, just two different styles. I've heard clear turkeys, I've heard raspy turkeys. There's no right or wrong. If you can't call with rasp, it doesn't mean you can't kill turkeys. That is not true at all. Yeah, it sounds real, and it has an effect on turkeys, but don't be discouraged if you can't do that. It takes a lot of years of practice to do it. The lip stop, now I used to not use a lip stop at all. The lip stop is very important. It sets, and I like it for consistency. If I'm on the roost first thing in the morning, I want to make sure that my lips are in the right spot before I make the first sound. So where you run your lip stop determines where your lips are on that call and where it is with that hole right there. So all that's got to be worked out ahead of time. You know, the morning you're sitting on the ground and talking to a turkey, ain't a time to be adjusting your lip stop. So get all that stuff worked out. I play mine going down the road in the truck. I guess everybody beside me thinks I'm a drug addict or something. When they see me. Yeah, but I mean, you know, I run it going down the road, and I can't play it at home a whole lot. My wife can hear one cluck and she'll get the broom and run down. She's got better ears than a turkey, I can tell you that. But you know, finding out what works for you. Like I say, everybody's got different lips. Everybody's got their mouth's different. Everybody pulls different air. This is what works for me. And my calls are set up this way. My calls are set up to run clear or raspy. Some calls are set up, Mr. Zach Farmer, probably one of the all-time great trumpet callers there ever was, told me that a call has to be run in the manner it was intended to be run. So everybody's call won't play raspy, everybody's call may not play in a certain way, but that call is designed to be run that way. So find a call that suits your style. If you want to be able to call like this or that, I try to set my calls up so they'll play either way, so that I can get the right airflow and everything matches the style. It's hard to do. It takes a lot of practice. Everybody wants to be able to run a trumpet overnight. And how many people remember the first time they ever put a diaphragm in their mouth? You know what the difference in a diaphragm and a trumpet is they keep it in their mouth all day long and they just play it until they learn how to play it. You gotta do the same thing with a trumpet. It's just more aggravating because it's bulky and you gotta carry it everywhere you go. But I promise you, it takes just as much or more to learn that trumpet than it does the diaphragm. So the hours that you spent with that diaphragm, spend that same amount of time with a trumpet and you'll have it. You'll get it, I promise you. Listen to turkeys and match that sound.
For your particular technique, I know how important draw is to you. Percentage-wise, I know your lips sort of act as a reed, correct?
Yeah.
Percentage-wise versus top lip versus bottom lip, are you using 60% more bottom than top, or is it the 50-50, or, you know?
Well, let me tell you, I know people, I would say I call a little more from the top lip some people call mostly from the bottom lip. That's 100% up to the person.
Correct, yes.
And that, you just gotta figure that out on your own. That's just one of those things, some people's left-handed, some people's right-handed. I can't teach you how to throw a ball with your left hand if you're right-handed. It's gotta come natural. It's gotta be what works for you.
If I was noticing like a couple of your videos, you barely got your top lip even touching the lip stop, so I could tell you maybe just using a little more top.
Well, touching it how though, see, like this, actually got more top lip on it than you think, because it's over the hole. But my bottom lip, and like this, I maybe actually got more bottom lip. See what I'm saying?
But pressure on the lip stop, you maintain a constant pressure to the lip stop for air seal, or do you using the mount?
Honestly, I vary that. I vary the pressure to change the tone. The pressure that you're putting in, the pressure, it's just like playing a musical instrument. You're playing a guitar, you got this going on, you got this going on, you got all of this. It's the same thing. I'm changing tone with pressure, lip pressure on the mouthpiece, pressure on the lip stop, and the volume of air. You know, science will tell you that if I pull more air through an object the same size, that it has to go faster. Faster air usually becomes higher pitch. You see what I'm saying?
Yes.
So there's so many variables. There's so much going on there. It's a complicated thing that you may not realize. I mean, it's simple, but there's a lot going on there. So that's just kind of, and I don't know if I really answered the
No,
question.
that was perfect, thank you.
Now on the tube, it's very similar. A lot of people say, well, how much lip pressure and all? I'm gonna show you on the tube a couple things here that make a difference. Now I'm gonna tell you this, my tubes don't have lip stop. I know almost everybody's tube has a little flat piece on the top that's a lip stop. And that's fine. You know, I mean, almost all of them have that. Mine don't, and I'll tell you why it doesn't. I run a call maybe different than some. I want to be able to change the angle. I want to be able to, that lips, if you run a lip stop on tube call, it puts your lip in one spot. And that call has to be run in that one spot. That lip stop is in the same place, and that's good. If you're learning how to run it, that's really good. But if you want to try to get some different sounds and you want to master the tube all the way around, try one without the lip stop. Like I say, none of mine do. And people are like, well, I don't know where to put my lip. Well, you're not focusing on that lip stop anyway. You need to be focusing on that reed. I'm going to do a little series here, and I want you to watch how changing the angle changes the pitch. All right, I'm going to start with a high pitch, and I'm going to change the angle. I'm going to call from here, and then I'm going to bring the call down, and you listen to the pitch. You hear how I went from high to deep? So I can get that in this, okay? Then I can change my air pressure to get volume and pitch. So the more air, if I leave everything the same and I'm putting more air, it's gonna be higher pitch. It's gonna be louder too. See what I did? Now, the more pressure I put, without changing the angle, the more pressure I put, all I did there was push my lip further into that reed. See what I'm saying? Stretching that reed, making it tighter, and that air changes the tone. So as I do that, I can learn, and a lot of people will do that and try to get their yelp like that. It's not really that necessary once you learn to use your air, and that air has to come from the diaphragm. Once you learn how to use that air, you don't have to, you know, a lot of people will try to get that double note like with their jaw or their lip, like. That's not necessary, nothing wrong with that. A lot of times that will help you get some jakier stuff going on. But if you control your air, you use that air from your diaphragm, you can actually get that drop. I'm doing is pushing air and releasing, pushing air and releasing. I'm bringing it from the diaphragm, so I'm getting that rollover without moving my jaw and without changing anything. And that makes it different. When you start changing your jaw and changing your pressure, you start changing a lot of things at once. So that's kind of what I do. And then when I gobble, now I'm gonna tell you, this call is not set up to gobble. I like a little bit thicker reed to gobble. It will gobble, but it ain't great. But what I'll do gobbling is I'm gonna force air across it and shut it off quick, like a tucka. A lot of times a gobble, if you listen to it, has a front, a middle, and the end. A lot of people, when you hear them, just kind of. But to get that realism in there, they got a crack, a middle, and then an end. And sometimes they'll gobble and they'll just run out of air. So you hear how that. So I'm cutting that air off, and I'm not using my tongue or anything else. I'm doing it with the diaphragm. I'm all coming down from here with that air, puffing it. So that's just kind of how I run it. The keys, I'll run off the top. And what I'm doing is I'm changing the location of my lip, and I'm getting that extreme top. So that makes it high pitch. And when I yelp off of that, I'll just drop my lip. And it's really hard to go from that yelp back to that key. That's tricky. But to go from the key to the yelp, if you start at the top and then bring that thing down and drop that lip back into the heart of the call, then it'll start coming in with a yelp. All right, anybody? Yes, sir.
You said with the thicker latex for the gobbling, what thickness do you look at for that?
You can, it depends on the person, depends on the kind of gobbler you want to portray. I run, this is 4,000s. A lot of people run 7,000s, 5, 6, 7, somewhere in that area. Hard to get 6. You can find some 5 and some 7. But it will gobble better because it's just a thicker latex, and it allow that body to come into it. Anybody else? Yes.
You go ahead, man. Can we get the kiki on the trumpet one time? You hadn't done it.
No, I'll be honest with you, my lips are going. I'll tell you this, I make a trumpet that'll kiki like a turkey does. I don't hear a lot of trumpet keys that are turkey keys. And I'll be honest with you, this call ain't set up for it. It won't, it's possible, but it won't do it justice. So you got a question?
Yeah, I see you run your tube call off your bottom lip. I've seen some people, spin it over. Do you feel you have more control off your bottom? Is that why?
I do. Yeah. I just feel your bottom lip's usually a little thicker, and it for me it's easier to control. But hey, I've seen people run it off the top too, and it works. You can do it. It's just a little different for me. Yeah. Well, I don't know if there's any more, but I don't know nothing else about a turkey. That's all I know. I appreciate y'all coming. I've really enjoyed it.